are confused about this decision,
okay,
or upset by it. So just spell out, just give me your logic, particularly on this sort of on the one hand, on the other. What is the cost you see to the constitutional order of a shutdown that isn't already being done now?
It's a dramatic cost. Here's why, Chris. Under a shutdown, it is the executive branch, in this case Trump, Musk, Doge, and Vogt, who's head of the OMB, who we all know are authoritarians, vicious, nasty, who would have sole control over what is funded and what isn't. They get to determine what is a, quote, essential service. And they will just cut to smithereens, far greater than in the CR bill, which is a lousy bill, far greater than that, what could be funded and what couldn't. And there's no recourse. You can't go to court. This is a decision totally in the executive branch. And so it would be devastating. Why is it that Elon Musk and Donald Trump want a government shutdown? So they can take control of the government and do their vicious, horrible things. They could cut half the government. They could tell employees you're not essential and never bring them back, permanently firing them. It's a disaster. And in a few weeks, if there was a shutdown, everyone would be complaining and howling. Why did they cut? Why did they eliminate SNAP? Why did they cut so much of Medicaid? But they could do all that on their own. That's the problem. There is no check on them with a shutdown. That's not to say this CR bill is a good bill. It isn't. It didn't have any safeguards in it. But it would be much, much worse to have a shutdown. And my job, Chris, as leader, is to see things a little bit ahead down the road and see how horrible this would be and alert people to it.
So I want to sort of present two arguments on the other side. One of them is that it was quite, and I hear you on this. This is not an easy call. I want to be clear. I mean, I don't think it is, but you know, the AFG union, which is the largest union representing federal workers, they won a big victory today in federal court about those probationary employees who were fired. They came out against the CR, which really surprised me, right? These are the people that seem to have the most skin in the game on precisely the terms you're enunciating. And they said, the fact that this CR has no protections that will actually be followed means that we can't support it. If the people whose livelihoods are on the line say you cannot go along with this thing, why are they wrong?
I understand why they're so upset with the CR, but I disagree with them because the shutdown would be worse for their employees. They could just eliminate huge portions of government workers automatically. They could eliminate programs automatically, which they can't do on the CR. The CR has certain spending, and they can screw around with it, and they will. These guys are sons of guns. They're going to do everything they can to hurt the government. You know what they've talked about. Elon Musk, this billionaire who cares nothing about taking people's Social Security away, this guy says that he wants to cut $2 trillion out of the federal government. A shutdown would allow him to do it. And here's another point, Chris. There's no exit ramp. Anyone who wants the shutdown, I've asked them, well, how do we get out of it? Guess who it's up to get out of it? Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Doge. So it's a it's two bad alternatives. And I respect people who actually don't want it, vote for the CR. It's awful. But with the alternative being a government shutdown, that's even worse. So here's the other sort of way that I've heard people phrase this, right? Democrats don't control any part of the government. So there's not a ton of leverage. The one thing they have leverage is in the Senate, where you need a filibuster-proof majority on a cloture vote. That there's essentially an unconstitutional assault on the government right now. And I think you would agree with that, right? Is.
An assault on the constitutional
These guys are the worst, and we got to fight them every step of the way. As we say in Brooklyn, Chris, every effing step of the way.
But look, Russ Vought is already telling people, but he's telling people on the floor, we are not even going to listen to this CR. This is a piece of paper that we will impound and rip up the moment it's passed. If that's the case, how is voting for cloture not essentially an imprimatur on the very same assault on the constitutional order?
They're already, even without this CR, they're already doing it.
Right.
Okay? They did it to the Department of Education. But I can tell you, I've been through shutdowns before. It's not that this CR is good. It's not that voting for it is good. It's horrible. But the alternative is worse. And we have to look just a month ahead and see how bad a shutdown would be for all the things we believe in, and how I'd say Trump and Doge and Musk and Vogt They're like drooling with happiness and desire to get a government shutdown. They've said they want it. Why? Not for doing anything good, I'll tell you that. These guys are authoritarians.
Let me just stay with this in 1 second. I think the theory of the case for people that don't want Democrats to vote for cloture is that Americans don't quite understand what's being done to their government. It's being done in this sort of haphazard fashion. The stories are sort of getting out. You know, there's this Forest Service worker who got laid off for no reason, and there's this veteran who's got a traumatic brain injury, who's got a clinical trial. But the shutdown would be a way of actually calling the question. And here's what I would just offer. It seems to me that the demand that makes the most sense here, and I'm not a U.S. senator, is for the Republicans to vote on a rescission package that enunciates the cuts DOJ has done, as opposed to allowing an unelected co-president unilaterally eviscerate the American constitutional power of the purse.
Well, the bottom line is the Republican Senate is in total obeisance to Trump. They're not going to oppose him in any way. But if they allow Trump to make the kind of drastic cuts that I greatly fear in a government shutdown, they'll be culpable as well. And make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. Why? Ask yourself again the question. Why does Musk and Trump and Vote want this? Vote already has plans on how to slash the government, far worse than slashed in the CR. Much worse. Every program, every part of government would be at their disposal, their wicked disposal. So that's the problem here. It's not that the CR is good, it's horrible. Well, and all things being equal, we should have opposed it. But the alternative being a shutdown makes things worse. And I believe this, much worse. And I believe this, I wouldn't have done this. I knew I'd get criticized. But I felt obligated for the country, for my Democratic caucus, to the people, to explain how bad a shutdown would be. And if we went into a shutdown and everything bad happened, I had to give people this warning.
Can I'm going to just keep you for two more questions, if that's okay. One is a sort of question about strategy and dealing what I think you and I and many people watching this agree is essentially an assault on the constitutional order, and that it's this.
Absolutely.
The only thing they understand is meeting conflict with conflict. So if you look at Doug Ford in Ontario, who banged the table and said, "You're going to tariff us, I'm going to tariff you, we're going to put a surcharge on electricity," that the only thing that gets their attention, the only thing that gets them to back down, is meeting conflict with conflict. If you meet conflict with essentially managed retreat or strategic non-engagement, then they roll all over you.
We are going to conflict with them on everything. On the tax cuts for the billionaires. They've become a plutocracy, an oligarchy. On Medicaid. We have plans to conflict them with all of that. If the shutdown occurred, we wouldn't be able to do that because they would fill up both the Senate and the discussion on whether we should cut this and not cut that, of things that they want to cut. So to have the conflict on the best ground we have, summed up in a sentence, that they're making the middle class pay for tax cuts for billionaires, it's much, much better not to be in the middle of a shutdown, which to divert people from the number one issue we have against these bastards, these people, which is not only all these cuts, but they're ruining democracy. And one other thing on a shutdown. On a shutdown, the courts could close. Or at least be totally disabled. And the courts are one of the best ways we've had to go after these guys.
Final question about just an issue of intercameral strategy. I mean, the Democrats voted en masse against this in the House. They lost only one vote, Jared Golden in Maine. I've seen a lot of House members, and across an ideological range, interestingly enough, urging the Senate to filibuster this, saying, look, this is existential about whether we control the power of the purse or not. We cannot essentially sign off on this DOJ unilateral arrogation of this power.
Yeah, look,
do they have it wrong?
I supported what the House did to vote against this bill universally, but that didn't cause a shutdown. It's different in the Senate. And I knew people were going to disagree with me, but I felt so strongly that the shutdown would be the greatest disaster we face with these arrogant autocrats, that we had to avoid the shutdown and fight on many of the other things every other